though, Justin, it's Wednesday, December 31st. Now, it is the last day of December, it is the last day of the year, and therefore it is the last official day of the beginning of this project. I don't know about you, but I would certainly not mind keeping this going. I think it went rather well, so I think we should talk about giving it its own channel now. And I know when we briefly talked about this earlier, we mentioned that we would scale back what we're doing so we wouldn't make a video every single day, and I would certainly not be opposed to that. But we can figure out specifics later. I don't really want to figure out specifics by myself right now. Now, as I mentioned at the end of my last video, and you mentioned yesterday, I recently obtained a stomach bug. It has not been an overly fun process, but I have reached the point where I think it has gone completely. Or at least got enough that I can feel I can actually, record things and see people. So hopefully we'll be filming a bit more today, Justin, especially since we kind of have to, because you leave in 2 days, and tomorrow I'm doing something with Katie, so that leaves today to finish all the recording we need to finish for the storyline that's coming up. In your video yesterday, Justin, you talked about Into the Woods, and I would kind of like to do the same. Because I also saw Into the Woods at some point last week, and I have words. Now, usually when I say I have words in that fashion, it means I didn't like it, and that's not accurate. This was actually a very good adaptation, and I was quite happy with it. And I don't want to repeat any of the things you said, because that would be redundant, so I'm going to try to just kind of add my own take on it. One thing that I will say before I move on is that it should be known that Into the Woods is one of my favorite musicals. Therefore, I'm kind of protective of it, so when I heard that Disney was going to be taking it on, I was hesitant. One of the things that I absolutely love about Into the Woods is the fact that it is a very morally gray production. While in the first act you pretty much know who's good and who's bad, by the time the second act rolls around, every single character, you can't tell anymore. And I can't help but remember that most of the fairy tale adaptations that Disney has done had a tendency to have very clear-cut good guys and bad guys. Of course, thinking back on it now that I've seen Into the Woods, I can realize that they've dealt with morally gray characters before, and they've certainly had their fair share of anti-heroes, so I guess I shouldn't be overly surprised that they were able to accomplish such a good production. Because they did a very good job at keeping these characters as morally gray once the second half began. And most of the positive things that you said I also agree with. Overall, I think this was very well done, but there is one thing that I would change. Okay, there are a few tweaks I would make. I would also add the agony reprise, because I know that Chris Pine and Billy Magnussen would do a wonderful job with it, but as you said, I understand why it was cut in the first place. But if I had to choose one thing that I would change, or in this case add, it would be the character of the mysterious man. But I will say before I continue that there are spoilers ahead, so if you haven't seen the movie and you haven't seen the musical, and you don't want to be spoiled, you probably shouldn't continue watching. Now, the mysterious man, technically speaking, does kind of sort of make an appearance in the movie. Because in the musical, although we don't know it at first, we find out that the mysterious man is actually the baker's father. And it's the baker's father trying to make amends for the mistakes that he made. And I really like this addition because we have this man who has made mistakes in the past trying to absolve for them, and we have his son who is trying to do everything to not become his father. And we have this in the movie. We have the baker trying not to become his father, but because we don't have the addition of the father, we don't see that the father is trying to make amends for what he himself has done. We kind of see that when the baker's father's ghost comes back near the end of the movie, when the baker tries to leave, but it's not really played upon all that much. Basically, the ghost of his father comes in to say that he shouldn't run away from his problems, and that he shouldn't make the same mistakes that he did. But in the musical, because we see more of him, we see that he is actively trying to make sure his son doesn't make the same mistakes, and he is actively trying to make sure that his mistakes don't ruin his son's life. So the character becomes that much stronger. Plus, with the addition of the Mysterious Man, we have the addition of the song No More. No More appears in the musical after the baker leaves, after the witch dies. So it's at the same place in the movie where the baker's father's ghost talks to him. And the same thing happens here, because at the end of Act 1, the baker's father dies. So what we get with No More is, at first, the father trying to be all mysterious again. Throughout the musical, as he's attempting to help his son, he's not really straightforward about anything. He tends to be all mysterious, he tends to spout in riddles, and of course he doesn't want his son to know who he is. The baker does find out by the end of the first act, of course, but that doesn't stop the mysterious man from continuing to be mysterious. But the baker is done with that. He's just lost his wife, he lost his father before without even knowing who he was, not to mention the fact that he's lost everything else that he has ever held dear. So he is ready to give up. And the father basically says, okay, if you're ready to give up, then let's go. And it becomes incredibly haunting when you consider the fact that this is the ghost of the baker's father saying, come with me. But it's also important to realize that while the baker's father is saying this, he is not actually saying that the baker should follow him. He is saying what he's been trying to say throughout the entire musical, that he doesn't want his son to follow in his footsteps. He's not going to stop his son from doing that, because obviously he can't, but he also doesn't want him to. And so what we get with this song is the baker's father simply trying to make sure that the baker doesn't go astray. And while we do get that in the movie, I think it is just so much stronger in the musical, and I wish they had included it. But that being said, I will say that overall, this was a phenomenal adaptation. It is definitely something I would recommend going to see if you liked the musical. And if you haven't seen the musical, I would definitely recommend seeing the musical. I mean, in case you can't tell from this long video where I basically just talk about one part of the musical, I really like the musical. So yeah, that's what I have to say for this video. I know it's going to be long, again, but what can I say? I like Into the Woods. And hopefully I will see you later today for recording, Justin, but either way, I'll see you sometime, because I also don't know what's going to happen with the project since December's over, and so I don't know if you're actually going to post a video tomorrow, if we're going to switch days. It's complicated, but I will see you at some point. Clarity.